Welcome to Historical Time Periods and Composers. The historical periods are briefly medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, Classical, Romantic, and 20th century. During the medieval time, we think of the Middle Ages from 800 to 1400. Think monks. We had the plain chant, a form of medieval church music, which involved chanting, no instrumental accompaniment, a Latin text, solo and or with a choir, and it was the only music allowed in early Christian churches. Then we had the Renaissance, which means rebirth. Think of Queen Elizabeth I. Our instruments were the lute, brass instruments, organ, clavichord, harpsichord. We had madrigals, motets, and troubadours. There was sacred and secular. Baroque. Themes were based on ancient myths. They were flamboyant and ornamental. We had opera, concerto, sonata, choral, and oratorio. Brass strings, mostly violin, cello, harpsichord, organ, and harp. Some notable Baroque composers were Jean-Baptiste Lully, who was an Italian opera composer. Domenico Scarlatti made over 500 sonatas for the harpsichord. Antonio Vivaldi, operas, and over 400 concertos. George Friedrich Handel made operas and oratorios, most famous for his Messiah. Johann Sebastian Bach was the most prolific composer and father, had thousands of works in various forms, but no opera. Some vocal definitions to know are recitative, opera, imitating the pattern and rhythm of speech; aria, which is also an opera term, when a character expresses feelings through a flowing melody; bel canto, Italian for beautiful singing; castrato, Baroque, boy singers castrated prior to puberty to avoid the deepening of the voice. The main roles of the opera were written for castrato. During the classical period, we had the style galant and comic opera. Strings included pairs of bassoons, flutes, horns, oboes, piano replaced the harpsichord. We had symphonies, sonatas, chamber music, string quartets, waltz, and minuet were popular. Some notable classic composers were Johann Stamitz, who was a violinist. Mannheim Orchestra used crescendo and diminuendo effects in his music. And Franz Joseph Haydn, father of the symphony and string quartet, who also wrote sonatas. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, famous for symphonies, sonatas, string quartets, operas, The Marriage of Figaro, masses, and concertos. And then Ludwig van Beethoven, first major composer to shift composers' social status from servant to that of an artist. During the Romantic period, the music tells a story and expresses an idea. Program music and character pieces, imagination and passion focus, varied instrumentation, piano was the favorite. Saxophone and tuba are new, fuller, more dramatic melodies. Some notable Romantic composers include Schubert, Berlioz, and Liszt. Also Chopin, Schumann, and Verdi. 20th century music involved a lot of experimentation, innovation, and technology. We had impressionistic music in the early 20th century, which rejected the rules of tonality, creating music pleasing to the ears, relaxed and almost dreamlike. We had a 12-tone system, eliminating the tonal center, creating music that felt anxious and unresolved. And then neoclassical in the early 20th century. Think of Stravinsky, reflecting the 18th century music, and it did not emphasize tonality or regular rhythmic patterns. Berg, von Webern, and Sibelius are all noted 20th century composers. Edward Elgar, Ralph Vaughan Williams, and Bela Bartok also were famous. Ernst Bloch and Charles Ives, also famous. Some other 20th century forms include jazz, concert music, and serialism.